path of truth. It's a strange thing, because the word money comes from the goddess of Rome, Juno Monetas. And capital doesn't follow the paths that these fake Brexit cultists think it's going to do, which is it's all going to flood into England and the EU's going to crash. No, it's not going to happen, because true guardians of wealth realise that actually the European Union is quite a solid foundation for long-term development, investment, there's a high educational achievement and so on in Europe. Whereas in Britain, it's looking like a bit of a risk at the moment. It's going to be volatile, it's going to be breaking up. Who in their right mind would leave money in a bank in London? Especially when now they've just seized the assets of the Venezuelan government gold, saying, we're going to give it to the people the CIA want. London is losing its credibility as a financial centre because, and you see Marx explains why. What he says is when capitalists behave selfishly, as they're doing, Brexit, perfect example, ultimately they self-destruct. There's an inbuilt writing mechanism within capital that eventually those people self-destruct. It can happen in wars, we can have total chaos and meltdown in the British Isles, or it can happen in intellectual leaps and moral transformations, which is what I want as an educator. I used to argue with my mother about Marxism, and we agreed on one thing, that it's an educational theory that has merit and should be studied academically and scientifically. And my job as European coordinator of the World Intellectual Forum here in the whole of Europe, including Britain and Ireland and Scotland and Wales, is to rethink through all these issues about money, capital, wealth, power, violence, peace, and to try and find a formula that the intellectuals of Europe, the thinkers, can help prod our politicians into actually doing the right thing. And the first thing and last thing I will give is this notion of a politician's license. Until we get that, the whole thing is not possible, because politicians can just misuse their power and lie. This is what they were doing in the days of Stalin and Hitler. We have to grow up and not let them do it anymore, because when you leave the door open, as Christ said, the wicked spirits flock back in. So thank you. I've shared some thoughts for St Bridget's Day and Imbolc. I'm going to finish with a quote, only a part, from Psalm 107. The Psalms are hymns of prayers for help from the Absolute in times of darkness. And David, when he was going through trouble and people were on his trail, they came out songs. I'm also a singer and a bard, and I sing too, but these psalms are beautiful, and I'm saying these on behalf of all of us. To finish, Psalm 107. Give thanks to the Creator for all that is good. Your kindness exists forever. I'm going to comment as I go along. That's a beautiful opening, because it confirms what I'm saying, that God is good. Not just good, but also kind. One of the things that really worries me about Brexit is it's so unkind. It's causing huge suffering to many, many people in society throughout Britain, let alone all the Brits living in Europe like me, and the government doesn't care. There's no kindness. These are the people that would willingly stick a red hot poker in the tongue of James Naylor, and pass legislation against the Jews or whatever. No, I'm not. My God, and the same as the God of the Jews, is kind. Those who were rescued will proclaim it. Those who you redeemed from the hand of distress. Hang on, something's going on here. I love this. So somebody's rescuing somebody. Somebody's being redeemed. The whole point of Judeo-Christian Islamic history is there is an active God of mercy and compassion who is reaching out to us all the time to rescue us from difficult situations. And that's what I'm saying can still happen over Brexit. It is possible that, you know, the redemptive force of history, Yahweh, whatever you want to call it, and it's beyond names, can still redeem us from this craziness that we're embarked on as a country. From distant lands he gathered them in, from the place of sunrise to the place where the sun is swallowed by the dark, from the north to the sea's border of sand. The poet is saying that the people that are to be redeemed come from everywhere. The Jewish tribes, as George Mendenhall said, were transnationalists. They were wandering Habiru. They were desert people. They were people without a story and without a name, unlike the proud Egyptians and Babylonians who had their stories and their genealogies. So all they had was this scattered oral tradition that eventually got written down as the Bible. A few scraps of stories of Jacob and the man Abraham who stood up for the one truth, and Joseph who flourished, and so on and so on. These stories were all they had, and Moses brought these disparate groups together in a new story, which is let's escape from prison, let's get out of the chaos of in slavery, and let's go and find some place where we can hang out and be at peace and free. And he led them through the desert, and the psalm is saying this is what happened. All these strange misfits were brought together in this journey, which we call Exodus. They strayed from you in the desert, frightened by the desolate landscape of their path. Yeah, it's difficult to stay on track, and we get frightened by the immensity of the task. If you think of how on earth can we stop Brexit, it's got the juggernaut of the press, it's got the juggernaut of bought parliamentarians, it's got the whole juggernaut of miseducated generations of people who are shouting for it. How can they be contradicted or opposed? It's an immense task. It's like me being told I've got to walk to Afghanistan, or me being told I've got to leave my comfortable life in the Nile and go and walk in the desert. So of course I'm going to faint and feel I can't go on. But if I feel that presence, if I have a faith that there's some purpose or reason for this task, it's like in the Lord of the Rings, when the little company of the rings set out, and they're in that immense landscape being hunted by evil horsemen. They faint from fear, but they keep going. That's what those of us that oppose Brexit have to do. We're that company with the ring. A city to dwell in they could not find. That hunger grew unquenchable. They thirsted until dry, their souls faint within. In other words, it's not easy to oppose the received truth of the Pharaoh of the day, with all the press and the media and the intelligence services and all the trolls behind them, but the little band has to carry on. The people that have a deep down sense of what is right and what is wrong, the people who realise that something immensely ridiculous and horrendous is being proposed in Brexit, who realise it's a dark cult, literally. We have to oppose it in the name of truth, just as Thomas à Becket opposed the dark lords who were supporting Henry II. They cried out to you about all that made quiver their minds. From all their constraints, you lifted them safely away. You helped them traverse a straight path, to walk towards a city where they could peacefully dwell. I love that sequence of verses. So the psalm is saying, Psalm 107, in the marvellous translation by Pamela Greenberg, that if you keep that faith that there is a hope, which is what Imbolc brings, there is going to be a spring, folks. There is going to be a summer. We don't know how, we don't know when, but this winter queen of darkness that C.S. Lewis wrote about in the Chronicles of Narnia is going to fall. And that hint of spring, that hint of thaw is coming. And that redemptive force that intervenes in history is going to come and free us from our constraints and lift us safely away. We do actually need a miracle. We have to start thinking at the level of the miraculous, and which is why I'm saying that Brexit has to be realised for what it is. It's a dark, occult cult, which has literally hijacked a nation's thinking, or some of it. Once we see through that game, and once we hold out instead for the meta-Catholic wisdom of universal, sophiology, to use a philosophy term, then we see through the partiality and the ignorance that it represents, and we can get back on stream working with our European neighbours for finding that path to peace. And this is what the psalm says. It says that redemptive force helps us traverse a straight path. Now the word straight path is an orthodox path. I was once asked by the Dean of King's College, University of London, where I was baptised, Richard Harries, who went on to become Bishop of Oxford, if I was orthodox, because he couldn't work out my theology. What was I? And I said, yes, of course I'm orthodox, in the sense that Aristotle used the term, which is going straight to the truth. Orthodoxize is going straight to truth, and of course I'm orthodox. Some Christians are, but not all. There are many Christians that are deceitful and scheming. There are many Buddhists that are letting the show down in their treatment of the Rohingya in Burma. There are many, people that have a label but don't live up to the label. I like Aristotle's term. Let's just go to the straight path. It's a phrase that's used in the Quran a lot, and I commented in my commentary on the Quran. I'm also a Sufi. I go to the straight path of ultimate truth wherever it's to be found. And these are just paths that history has created for mankind. Sufism, Zoroastrianism, Druidry, and so on. In a sense, the person of truth walks all these paths simultaneously. To walk towards a city where they can peaceably dwell. Now that's what we're still doing. This job is not finished. Walter Benjamin, one of the great Jewish thinkers of the 20th century, he was looking for this city. He was an intellectual. He walked through the Pyrenees in the snow, and the Germans were after him to kill him because he was Jewish. And they went up to the high passes and found them blocked, and he didn't have the strength to wait anymore. But to me, it's a metaphor of this journey that we're on, searching for a place of peace. As an intellectual, I work for it through the journey of the mind, and I invite you to join me in that quest. Join my institute, join my work here at the European Peace Museum. Come and visit, come and stay, come and write a book. Come and help me write some of mine. Let's think through together the intellectual paths to peace. Whatever our religious background, we're all ultimately going to come to the same place, which is, I call it the meta-Catholic position, the meta-Mahayana, the meta-universalist position of common ultimate truth. We can sit and discuss around the campfires when we get there. I don't think we're going to get there by doing things like Brexit, by smashing up, the bridges along the way. So blessings upon everyone who's listened to this. Blessings for Imbolc, and blessings for St Bridget's Day. And may we find that city of peace together. Shalom.